Once upon a time, in a world of ruffles, corsets, and a dash of royal intrigue, Queen Elizabeth I reigned as one of the most iconic figures in English history. But behind her celebrated image lay a scandalous secret. The makeup she used to achieve that ethereal beauty might have played a part in her untimely demise. Buckle up as we dive into the bizarre beauty rituals of the Virgin Queen and explore the toxic legacy she left behind. In the late 16th century, the upper crust of Elizabethan society was too obsessed with a particular beauty standard. Smooth alabaster skin was the gold standard of attractiveness. In a time when a sun-kissed glow was anything but desirable, Queen Elizabeth's ghostly complexion set the bar for beauty. In fact, she was the original influencer, paving the way for the porcelain-skinned looks we see today, though perhaps not with the same health-conscious approach. But how did Elizabeth achieve this look? Enter Venetian ceruse, a cosmetic concoction that could make a modern makeup artist weep. This white lead-based product was essentially a cocktail of poison that women layered onto their faces like frosting on a cake. So if you're feeling guilty about your last beauty purchase, remember, at least it didn't contain lead. Let's unpack this lead-laden miracle product. Venetian ceruse was made of white lead and vinegar, and it was all the rage among the elite. Elizabeth, a staunch proponent of this trend, generously slathered it all over her face, turning her already pale complexion into a blinding white canvas. The process was so intense that she reportedly layered on her makeup up to an inch thick. Talk about a commitment to beauty. Now, if you're thinking, that sounds terrible, you're absolutely right. Modern science has confirmed that lead exposure leads to a variety of health problems, including hair loss, skin deterioration, and ultimately, death by lead poisoning. In Elizabeth's day, it was the ultimate beauty sacrifice. But considering the stakes, the saying, "beauty is pain," could not have been more accurate. But that's not all. Let's turn our attention to another sinister ingredient in her makeup bag: mercury. Yes, the very same toxic substance that still gives scientists the shivers. Elizabeth achieved her vibrant red lips with a lip stain made from cinnabar, a mineral containing mercury. When mixed with other pigments, it created that luscious, blood-red pout that graced many a portrait. However, the consequences of this beauty routine were severe. Mercury poisoning could lead to memory loss, irritability, and even depression. Side effects that Elizabeth reportedly suffered from later in her life. As if the application of these hazardous substances wasn't enough, Elizabeth had a horrifying method for removing her makeup. While most of us might opt for a gentle cleanser, she likely used a grotesque mixture of eggshells, alum, and, you guessed it, more mercury. Historians suggest that this concoction was, in fact, a nightmare for her skin. Rather than cleansing her face, it was literally skinning her alive, one layer at a time. Can you imagine the morning routine? I'll just exfoliate with some eggshells and mercury, and I'll be good to go. Before she became the face of the beauty trend, young Elizabeth faced a serious health crisis. In October 1562, she contracted smallpox, a disease that left her with permanent scars, significantly impacting her perception of beauty. And who could blame her? In a world where looks could dictate one's fate, the last thing a young queen needed was the pockmarked visage that smallpox left in its wake. During her recovery, she was determined to restore her beauty, seeking out all manner of beauty treatments. Her close friend, Mary Sidney, also suffered from similar scarring, and together they navigated the treacherous waters of Elizabethan beauty standards, where flaws were not just unflattering, they could lead to social ostracism. In an era where every blemish was scrutinized, Elizabeth knew that even the slightest imperfection could cause a scandal. She would not allow a few scars to ruin her chances of being viewed as a goddess in the eyes of her subjects. The pressure was immense, and to maintain her status, she needed to keep her royal glow intact. Speaking of perceptions, let's talk about Elizabeth's obsession with her image. To keep up appearances, she imposed strict guidelines on painters, forbidding any unflattering portraits. This meant artists had to be incredibly creative. They had to paint her as the youthful, perfect queen she wanted to be remembered as, while hiding the truth of her decaying skin beneath layers of toxic makeup. One of the most famous portraits, the Darnley portrait, painted in 1575, became a model for countless depictions of her. Artists would recycle its image for decades, ensuring that Elizabeth's legacy remained untarnished. But let's not kid ourselves. Even with all the filters, No amount of artistic flair could completely mask the ravages of time, or the toxic beauty regimen she adhered to. In her battle against aging, she also donned wigs to cover her thinning hair. Given the lack of modern hair care products, it was a wonder how anyone maintained any semblance of style at all. Wigs became a staple, but Elizabeth's secret was eventually exposed when the Earl of Essex witnessed the Queen's hair situation firsthand. Imagine his surprise at seeing her mostly bald head with just a thin ring of hair framing her face. As her reign continued, Elizabeth's mental and physical health began to decline. Her beauty routine, which once made her the toast of the town, started to take a toll. In her later years, she struggled with melancholy, which one courtier attributed to her refusal to rest. She believed that lying down would signal the end, and so she stood for up to 15 hours a day, with her attendants surrounding her with pillows for when she eventually collapsed. Tragically, on March 24, 1603, Elizabeth passed away. The exact cause is still debated, with possibilities ranging from pneumonia to cancer. However, the long-term effects of her lead and mercury-laden makeup undoubtedly contributed to her declining health. After a lifetime of poisoning herself for beauty, Elizabeth's body was literally toxic. The stories of her demise only became more dramatic in the retelling. Elizabeth Southwell, one of her ladies-in-waiting, claimed that during her wake, the Queen's body burst in her coffin due to the noxious vapors produced from years of toxic makeup. While many dismiss this account as exaggerated propaganda, there's a phenomenon called exploding casket syndrome, which occurs when a body is sealed too tightly and becomes a pressure cooker of gases and fluids. Let's just say, it was a grand finale worthy of the Queen's dramatic life. In the week leading up to her death, Elizabeth's doctors recommended a risky procedure to remove her coronation ring, which had begun cutting into her skin. Was it merely a case of a stubborn ring or something more sinister? One could argue that it was a fitting metaphor for her entire life, a beautiful crown that turned out to be a source of pain. Evidence of lead-based makeup usage stretches back to ancient times. As far back as the 5th century BCE, women were using lead to enhance their beauty, and during the Roman Empire, it became a widespread practice. By the 16th century, Venetian ceruse was the preferred choice for those looking to achieve that ghostly look. Little did they know they were courting disaster. Ironically, the toxicity of these cosmetics was recognized long after Elizabeth's passing. Lead wasn't classified as a poison until 1634, a mere 40 years after her death, meaning that many women continued to use it, blissfully unaware of the dangers they were facing. In modern times, we have the benefit of science and regulations that prevent the use of such dangerous ingredients in cosmetics. But the quest for beauty remains as strong as ever. We may not be using lead and mercury anymore, but we still face societal pressures to conform to ever-shifting beauty standards. And while there's no denying the advancements we've made, it's important to ask ourselves, at what cost?